Hey, friend, and welcome back. Today, we're talking about something that keeps a lot of agents, a lot of TCs up at night. And, maybe it's keeping you at night too if you're managing real estate transactions. We're talking about the deadlines that slip through the cracks. And more specifically, we're talking about why even experienced agents can sometimes blow deadlines and what you can do to make sure it does not happen to you. Now, let me tell you a story. I was working with an agent. She is super smart, been in the business for several years. She really knows her stuff. She had a buyer under contract and everything's going good. Inspection's done. We're through that. Appraisal came in fine. Financing's approved, everything. All right, we are days from closing. And then she gets a call from the lender. Hey, the buyer's telling me that there have been 3 amendments signed. I don't have any of them. We can't go to the closing table without these. Okay. Well, your heart drops in that instance. So she immediately starts, scanning back through her emails. And sure enough, days earlier, all throughout this transaction, there's been amendments going on. And she meant to send it. It's been signed, it's been done. The email was even drafted, it's sitting in her drafts. But somehow, in the chaos of managing the other transactions she has, it never got sent. Now, in this case, they were able to fix it. They did have to extend the deadline because there were some things in these amendments that, here we are a couple days from closing. We have 3 amendments. None of them have been sent to the lender. There were purchase price changes. There were other things in the amendments that ended up having to extend the deadline for the closing. Everything worked out. It was fine. But here's what really happened. The agent has now lost some credibility with the lender. She has lost some trust with her client. She spent a couple days in stress-induced panic trying to save the deal. And this is someone who's really good at her job. She's really good at what she does. And she has been doing this for a long time, and she really cares about her clients. So here's what we need to talk about. Why do deadlines get missed? Because I can tell you right now that it's not about agents being lazy. It's not that they're incompetent. It's because their system is broken. If you think about it and think about how most agents track deadlines, we used to track deadlines on a whiteboard in an office. Okay. That's a terrible way to track deadlines. But maybe you have, a paper checklist. Maybe you have a spreadsheet. Maybe you're using a calendar. Maybe you're really old school and you've got sticky notes all over your desk or all over your wall. But the problem with all of these methods is that they're static. They don't require you to remember to check them. They require you to manually calculate dates. They require you to be the one to remember everything. So the most commonly missed deadlines in real estate transactions, and I want you to ask yourself honestly if you've ever let one of these slip too. I want to go through the most commonly missed deadlines. Number 1 is inspection contingency deadlines, and this is a big one. In most contracts, buyers obviously have a specific number of days to complete those inspections, to either approve the property, negotiate repairs, whatever. You miss this deadline and your buyer could lose out on their earnest money or their ability to negotiate, either one. Okay, this is huge. This could make or break a deal. And if you let an inspection contingency deadline pass and your client, it could be detrimental. Okay. Number 2 is the appraisal contingency. So similar to inspections, when you have an appraisal contingency, the buyer has a certain number of days to, have the appraisal ordered, make sure that they have their lender has ordered the appraisal, or if they're not using a lender, have the appraisal ordered, receive the appraisal, accept it, or try to negotiate that price based on the appraisal value. So again, huge deal if this is missed. Number 3 is the loan contingency deadlines. So I know in the state I'm in, which is Tennessee, the buyer has a 3-day deadline to secure financing approval. So they have a specific date they have to secure that financing approval. If you miss this, the buyer could be in breach of their contract. Okay. Number 4 is a title contingency deadline. So sometimes the buyer has a window to review the title report and negotiate title issues. This can sometimes get missed. Now, we do not deal with this a lot in the state of Tennessee, but that is an issue, and that does sometimes get missed. Number 5 is disclosures. So seller disclosure deadlines. And, sometimes they have specific time frames to provide required disclosures. You miss these and you might be, your seller might be in liability. But there are so many other things that could be missed too. I mean, you could miss when you're negotiating repairs, you could miss your resolution period. So the time frame that you have to negotiate those repairs, that's huge. And you could also miss, if you're not checking in with the lender and making sure that the closing disclosure has been signed, you might miss that. And then that is going to delay closing, because it has to be signed within a certain number of days before closing. There's just so many moving parts. There's so many moving parts in every transaction. And the tricky part is that all of these deadlines normally all of these deadlines are calculated from the acceptance date, other than, your resolution period when you're negotiating repairs and things like that. But all of them are calculated from the acceptance date. And they're a lot of times in business days, not calendar days, but sometimes they are in calendar days. So you have to be really, you have to really look at your contract. So let's say your contract's accepted on a Friday. You have 10 business days for inspections. So that's actually 2 weeks, and 2 days when you account for weekends. So you have to actually manually add it up. If your contract is accepted on a Friday, then your day number 1 starts the following Monday, and you have 10 business days for inspections. But I've seen agents miss deadlines by literally 1 day because they forgot to include or exclude weekends from their calculations. 1 day. Or because they started their calculations on a day that they weren't supposed to be started. Okay. They also maybe didn't take into account a holiday, or, it could be anything, but I have seen agents miss deadlines by 1 day, and it's so frustrating for them, for their clients, for the other party. And that 1 day can cost you the deal, So let's talk about the solution. And no, the solution is not to become more organized. It is not to pay better attention. It is none of that. That's not a system. That's hope, and hope is not a strategy. The solution is automated deadline tracking. And I mean truly automating. I mean you putting dates on the calendar, not you putting dates on the calendar and you hoping that you see them. I mean putting them into a system that is going to automatically calculate every deadline the moment the contract is accepted. It sends you reminders at the right time, on the right day. It shows you a glance of what's coming up. It shows you what's overdue, what was due yesterday, what's due today, what's due tomorrow. And the moment that your contract is accepted, I want to walk through this. I want to walk through what this looks like in practice. So when your contract is accepted, you enter that acceptance date into your system. The system itself immediately calculates every single deadline based on the terms of your contract. So it will calculate your inspection deadline, your appraisal deadline, your loan approval deadline, your closing date. It even calculates when the earnest money is due, or when I was just thinking of another one. The closing disclosure needs to be signed. All of it, everything. But here's where it gets really powerful. That system doesn't just calculate the deadlines, it creates the tasks leading up to those deadlines. So let's say 5 days before your inspection contingency is due, you're going to get a task that says order inspection. Okay. 3 days before, you get a reminder to follow up with the inspector. 1 day before, you get a task to prepare the contingency removal paperwork or the repair proposal or whatever you need to do. On the day it's due, you get an alert. This must be completed today. Okay. That means you're not relying on your memory. You're not relying on your client. You're not hoping that you're going to notice on your calendar. The system is managing it for you. You're relying on the system, and the system is automatically calculating every single thing so you don't have to do it. And it frees up a lot of mental space, I'll just tell you. But here's the other critical piece, it's visibility. So at any given moment, you need to be able to look at your dashboard. You need to be able to see exactly every single transaction and where it stands. What deadlines are coming up? What's overdue? What requires your attention right now today? You should be able to see all of this in under 30 seconds. Now, I have worked with a lot of agents, but I've worked with one who implemented the system, and she told me something that is it's mind-blowing. She said, for the first time in 7 years, I'm not waking up in the middle of the night wondering if I forgot something, because I know my system is not going to let me forget. And that's what we're after. That's the goal. Not just efficiency, but peace of mind. Now, let me give you a pro tip that most agents don't think about. That is front loading your deadlines. And what do I mean by this? So here's what I mean. Let's say your inspection contingency is due in 10 days. Don't wait till day number 9 to order that inspection. Order it on day 1. Get ahead of your deadlines instead of racing to meet them. And the same goes for everything. Don't wait until the last day that the appraisal contingency is due. Don't wait until the financing deadline to check with the lender. Build in a buffer time, because I promise you something might go wrong. The inspector might be booked, the appraiser might take longer than expected, and the lender might need, additional documents. If you are always working right up against deadlines, you have no margin for error. So if you front load everything, then you have time to handle those inevitable problems that might come up during this transaction. So here's what I want you to do this week. I want you to pull out your current transactions, every single one of them, and I want you to write down every deadline for every transaction. Inspections, appraisals, financing deadlines, earnest money, closing dates, every single deadline that's in there, everything. And then I want you to look at your calendar, and I want you to make sure that you have reminders set for every single one of those deadlines. Not just on the day it's due. I want you to set reminders 3 days before, 1 day before, on the day of. And if you're looking at this list and you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're thinking, okay, there is absolutely no way I can keep track of all of this manually, that's your sign that you need an automated system. Because the bigger you grow, the more transactions you take on, the more impossible it becomes to track everything in your head, or even on a spreadsheet, or even on a whiteboard on the wall. And deadlines are non-negotiables in real estate. You miss one, and you could not only blow the entire deal, but you could cost your clients a lot of money. But when you have the right systems in place, you're not going to ever miss another deadline again. And more importantly, like one of my clients, you will sleep better at night. So I want to thank you for listening today. If you have found this helpful, I would love for you to share it with agents who need to hear it. And make sure you are subscribed, you're following, because next week we are diving into client communication and how to keep your clients happy without being available 24/7. I'll see you in the next episode.